Okay, so here I am playing, just about to start, Space Empires 4X. The name relates, of course, to it's become a term, explore, expand, exploit, exterminate, for the 4X thing, whatever. I don't know, I don't think they coined it, but that's the concept behind the name. And among other things, I found the setup rules. Beyond what I had found, it's kind of hard to find. There's sort of a it's the first thing player at start forces, but I'd expect that to be kind of the introduction, so I didn't really look at that. I looked at all the headers under it, and the most important thing got missed. And then, there's all these scenarios that indicate what you set up at the beginning of play in terms of the planetary setups. With the scenario I chose, the random distribution, I looked at the victory conditions, which also took a while to find. In fact, I only found them because I found some sort of variant somewhere. It's got solo games as well, a number of solo scenarios. I wouldn't do that. I try to avoid that in general. I may give it a shot at some point. But somewhere or another, yes, multiplayer. So I looked, and there's two different victory conditions for the multiplayer game. One is, if you wipe out one player, you win the game. Well, obviously that's an unfair advantage to these two, and it's going to promote them to attack each other. And you just end up, I would guess it would be a very, very short game, to tell you the truth, with the closeness that the board presents itself with. And there's a very good chance that, two players would just be in that position where one of them is very likely to win the war. I think a little bit more reasonable is to play the multiplayer long game when your goal is to eliminate all the other players, and once you eliminate one, you get 30 bonus resources for taking out their home planet. And that kind of balances out some of the things I said in the introduction. You don't get that much off of taking someone out. Well, there is a bonus. It just happens to only be in the scenario rules rather than in the base rule book. And I generally look at scenario rules almost last, assuming that most of the rules will be covered in the rule book. So I was left without really an idea of how you win, how you whatever. Would it be interesting to play this kind of board with that sudden death if somebody knocks someone else out? I don't know. I really don't. There might be enough productive capabilities, etc., that these guys actually aren't at an advantage. Remember, they start with the same forces at the beginning. So as long as the battles don't go terribly one-sided, people who have room to spread out and grow might be able to get that first strike in. So it might actually be a more balanced situation. I'm not sure. And I'm going to leave it up to the players to decide whether or not I'm going to play the long game, whether or not it's in their best interests to cut a deal or try to wipe the other guy out early. But given the balance, it's going to be really hard to wipe the other guy out early without losing something. So we'll see where this goes. Okay. Well, let's start things out, and I'm going to go, as this is seating order. It's vaguely clockwise, actually, from the board. I didn't want to set things up elsewhere. I wanted the counter tray for whatever reason. So green is going to be the first player on the first turn. There's no real way to indicate who's the first player each turn, no little choo-choo or anything like that. So now, movement is first, and normally I would be filling out these ship technology sheets, and sadly, whatever I printed out copies of things. It doesn't have I don't have copies of this sheet, which is actually the more useful. I have copies of this economic sheet. I didn't realize I needed 2 sets of sheets when I printed stuff out. This is only the back side of these, which kind of sucks actually. Well, no, it's not even that. It's something else. I don't know what the hell I've got here. Maybe it's on one of these other places. Alien economic sheet may be it. I don't know. That's for the solitaire game, I think. So I don't know. And we'll move forward and just try to work as best as we can. Now, there's obviously a reason not to explore a lot. And here's a problem. You got these counters upside down, and you've got these here, and you got to be real careful not to flip things. So I'm going to be creating 3 groups of scouts to move at the beginning of the game. Over here, this is 4 points of shipyards, which has a combat value and can fight, I guess, but it isn't terribly valuable. Okay, so all I can really do is sail out, and I'm going to move in the direction of yellow to try to claim that neutral space. And that's somewhere I've got one of these player aids or something, a sequence of play. Here we go, an abbreviated. So he just moved. Oh, that's combat. No, they didn't decide to give me that there. Great. It's not too exciting actually, because the sequence of play is just move, combat, and exploration, according to this. So, well, there can't be any combat. I only move 1. One thing you'll notice, if you go to higher levels of movement, move 2 doesn't mean you move 2 hexes. It means you move 1 hex in the first 2 turns and 2 hexes in the third. So each of these levels only adds 1 movement point. Move 6, the highest, is 2 hexes in the first turn and 3 hexes on the second and third. So it's still not a really huge amount of movement. Alright, and that's the highest level that's available. So now I do the exploration. We'll take these up. Lost in space. Okay. Left would mean the yellow player gets to choose where he's going. I'm going to just push him back home, and this chick goes away. I'll just put it here for now, but it can go back in the bag. I could have pushed him back to an unexplored space, but why do that? Why give him a bonus? Here he meets a doomsday machine, and that's going to be a problem. And over here he found some valuable minerals that he can haul back using his mining ship that he has. You see, the miner and the colony ships are face up. He didn't want to go exploring with colony ships, and had he would have found nothing good. So let's look at the doomsday machine and how that's going to work all over him. There's special rules for a doomsday scenario. We're not playing with those, but I think we're going to get to see a little bit of fighting here. The doomsday machine automatically attacks. It gets 2 attacks per round at Class C. Attack strength 9, defense strength 2, and hull size of 3. Is that all on here? Not really. But I guess they're different in the other scenario. But that's a danger. That's going to go in and attack Green's poor planet, and they may just wipe him off the game. Normally, these are white bordered, and therefore wouldn't show up as you're exploring your sort of home area, which is safer. Alright, well, let's look and see what happens here. First of all, we put, and I may not always do this, the battle marker in the hex. And now Green is facing him. Now he's got a rank of E, and the Doomsday Machine, although it's not on the counter because the or different in the other game, is Class C. It's going to get 2 dice, or 2 attacks. At Class C, its attack strength is 9. There's no technology here in this. So, it needs 6s to hit. And if it gets a single 6, it's going to destroy that. It does not. The scout gets to fire back at this point. Now, it's got a 3 attack strength. The Doomsday Machine only has a 2 defense strength, so it's got a 1 to hit. And it does not. So now the Doomsday Machine gets another attack in. And that was at 6s again, 2 dice. And it managed to hit the scout this time, destroying it. So, green is already at a bit of a disadvantage there. The Doomsday Machine goes back on the board, and that's going to be a problem. Let's see when it activates. After all players move, it's going to move 1 or 2 spaces towards the nearest asteroid, planet, asteroid, or ship within 2 spaces. It'll go randomly, so it could either end up here or here, and yellow probably doesn't want to taunt it. Realizing that's there, they're going to run away from it. Okay, speaking of which, it is yellow's turn, so why don't we do something kind of similar with them. They're a little worried because of those Doomsday Machines, but they're going to have to split up their scouts as well in order to get good coverage of area near them. Now they could send other ships, like a miner, for example. Let's just send my scouts out. But let's see what other things cost, because a miner costs 5, a scout costs 6. Hey, a miner's kind of cheap. What about a colonist? Well, that's a little more expensive. I'd rather not risk that, and I don't want to get next to the Doomsday Machine, but I'm going to go scout with my miner. Alright, again there's no combat right away, so we flip over, and there's a black hole here with the miner. And that's kind of a dangerous place. On a 1 through 6 he survives, on a 7 through 10 he's destroyed. He survives, so he's found a black hole space. Big deal. Here, some valuable minerals. Here, Tempe. It's a planet I can colonize. And then here, Ada, which is a barren planet. I can't colonize that without getting the terraforming ability. So that now is yellow's turn, and I'm going to have to mark things like this. But I guess we'll move on and see what the other expansions are like. I might as well just keep doing them. They're kind of interesting, but nah, I have to stop and make some diplomatic decisions based on the blue and the red piece. Red and blue were unable to come to an agreement. So, red looks at their situation and says, well, I still have 4 of these shipyards, which have a strength of 3. I'm not going to get wiped out right away by 3 scouts, which also have a strength of 3, very likely. It's possible. Question is, do I want to leave an extra scout behind? That'll be obvious because there'll be 2 ships over there. I don't have anything I can do with it. But no matter what, I'm going to be splitting my scouts into 3 stacks, like everyone else is. And let's see. This is dangerous because if I move here, blue could play 2 scouts and get a combat advantage on me. Likewise here. So I think what I want to do is this. The question now is, do I want to leave another scout behind? Because if I don't, it's only a slight disadvantage for blue to attack in the combat round. But here's the problem. If they win, and they have less than even odds of doing so, I'm hosed. I mean, they hurt my home planet, they can wipe out my colony ships and my miner. But what if they lose? Then I've got the edge in terms of production. So I'm going to spread out and do my exploration. I get a danger that destroys one of my scouts. There's always a risk to exploring. I find a mineral, and I find another danger. Now, more or less, this is pretty close to a worst case scenario. I've found nothing, I've lost 2 ships, and blue is probably in a pretty good position. I'm very happy that they didn't cut some sort of deal. Now, blue doesn't want to risk that and throw that advantage away by charging forward. So what they're going to do is they're also going to split their scouts. Now there's some risk to this as well, especially if red had their scouts out, but not much. Red would not have been positioned without leaving a scout behind to attack blue. And this is actually a reason that blue might have wanted, red might have wanted to leave one behind, because then they could focus 2 scouts on either of these, forcing blue maybe not to explore those. As it stands, blue's going to now send a miner here, scout here, and I'll send a scout here because it's safer. And let's see what we got. We found a planet. We found some minerals. We found a barren planet. And we found what I guess is another planet. Not much I can do with all this. I can eventually move down and grab that mineral, just like red can do here. But right now, the situation hasn't really developed in a way that I have any great, I don't have anything I can use with my pieces right now, but I'm at a big advantage over red. The mineral, not so much. Red can move their miner into place and take their mineral. It's going to take me 2 more moves to even get to mine, and I may not want to be there because I may not have the protection. On the other hand, I've got 2 habitable planets that I can colonize, which is something red just does not have. If we look at some of the other players, yellow has a habitable planet, green has a problem. They have a doomsday machine. Speaking of which, let's see what that doomsday machine does. Odd, it's going to go for their home planet. Even. Okay, I don't know if they lucked out or not, but their scout is now under attack here. What was the doomsday machine's value? I can't remember. It was big. It was like a 9 combat strength with a C. If we page through the rules, we can find it. Gets 2 attacks. This was an attack value, not a defense. They didn't need a 6, they needed a 9 or less. Wow, they would have won right away. Luckily, it didn't have an effect. And they destroy this scout as well. And that ends the first round. And I'm going to send this one up to you as we move forward.